for the group, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's going to be on.
Is it publicly available?
Yeah, it's going to be on YouTube, our YouTube channel. So they get to hear that. Welcome, everybody. This is the February 23rd edition of the FileMaker Developers Group in Louisville, Kentucky, the Kentuckiana FileMaker Developers Group. And we have 18 people here, and we are, we just had a chat amongst each other, and now this month's presentation is by Jonn Howell and Buddha. Buddha's going to join in, and John's going to be talking to us about a solution he put together, managing multiple windows with multiple users efficiently. So John will tell us all about that. Take it away, John.
Okay. Morning, everybody, or afternoon out there in Kentucky, right?
Yes, it is afternoon in Eastern time. Are you able to share your screen, John?
I'm working on it, yeah. Screen. We have to make sure it's the right one.
Okay, there we go.
You probably see this now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm working for a medical company in the Midwest that has a system that's been built with some legacy over the last 20 years. And they have a system where we verify benefits for people so they can get the equipment paid for it by insurance companies. And the verification process is very complex. So we have a multi-user scenario, but we want to convert that to a multi-session scenario where we can use multiple windows instead of what is now a single window modality. Everybody's looking at one window and they just navigate window to window. I have a number of constraints in the environment, but they've come to me and said, we want to separate the system that's all in basically one file into modules of different files and make it so not only is it multi-user, but it's multi-session. And the concept of multi-session means you might have multiple windows open for one user in such a way that you don't have confliction with the data. So let's start with what the request was. We want to convert a single window system and roughly 300 users in a single window system where everybody's looking at one window in FileMaker Pro as a native client. We want to have the ability to spawn multiple windows within a session, but selectively. We want to control what windows are opened, and we want to be able to track the windows as they're used so that each person during their session has a way of knowing what's going on, how many windows are there. Now imagine the screens are big. They're on laptops because we're during COVID-19, everybody's working for the most part remotely. And there's a lot of data. When you're verifying benefits for an insurance company, there's a lot of information. It takes nearly the entire screen on a laptop. Most of us have supplemental monitors, but some people only have one supplemental monitor and some are working on a 15-inch laptop. So we want to be able to track related windows because they're going to be overlapping and be hard to find. We'll be able to select that related window from a card window. So the chief FileMaker engineer there came to me after I show him my first round of my demo, which we'll show you shortly. I'm on version 12 of the demo. He came to me and said, I need to see a card window pop up on the parent window that'll tell me which ones I have open so I can select one, because the real estate's so full and the windows are so overlapping, it's going to be hard to select one once we go to a multiple window environment. So when I say multiple session, I mean independent windows doing independent activity for a given user during a session. So it's really one session technically, but we're tracking the windows as if they're each operating in a separate session. times 300 users. I also want to be able to close those related windows by selection. So track them, select which one I want, close whichever ones I want or individual ones as I go. And when I'm all done, the tracking mechanism I'm using, which is going to be in a table, is to be deleted at the end of the session. So we don't keep a history of all the different windows that had been opened by all the different users in the course of a day, because that could be in the thousands. So here's some of the constraints. They want me to avoid using global fields and global variables. The system itself has a very limited number of global variables because that's just part of their dynamic. They use a lot of execute SQL. They use a lot of local variables. They use a lot of hide function on card windows to show data that's not held in relationships or in calculation fields. We have an absolute minimum of calculation fields and almost no summary fields in the entire system. And this system is currently about 310 tables in one file, and then there's a couple dozen other supplemental files, but it's all principally happening in one place. So we want to prevent collisions of selected values. This is the reason for not using global fields or global variables. Let me demonstrate that. So if you have a parent record that you're working with or a parent record in a parent window, and you put a value in a global field, you may have 3 other windows or 3 other records, each with data fields. And you're trying to select that value from one of those data fields by putting the global field in there. And that's great when you're only using one at a time, but when you have 3 windows on the right, being represented by the red data fields, and you want to show that that's been selected on the left, you can't use a global field because that will be specific to each of the windows or each of the tables that you're pointing at. So I can't use this type of model with global fields or with global variables. So I've had to work around that. Another constraint is the windows are still large. Like I said, we're using a lot of data to be viewed, using most of the real estate on the window for each window. And with laptops, that's almost completely used up as it is. Sometimes they're, depending on the size and the resolution of their monitor, they're actually scrolling to look at one window. Imagine if they had 5, 6, 7, 8 windows open at once. So those windows will overlap on the screen. And they want to make the selection of the windows easy. So to do this, I figured out we have to be able to track each window, and we have to name each window. But you just can't say, you know, database 1, database 2, database 3, whatever you're calling the system. I want a name for each window, but it has to be readable. And it also has to be unique because I need to be able to select the windows by name. So I need a window naming convention that's easy to read, that's unique, and doesn't look techie. So I started by naming each window with a UUID. And then one of the engineers came to me and said, you can't make the users look at a UUID, it's just going to confuse them. So you have to come up with something that's a combination of readable, unique, and not techie. You need to make the selection of each window easy. So I want you to make a card window on the parent window that will indicate which windows are open, but only show that card window if indeed there are some child windows that exist that are open. Make it pleasant. So they wanted me to use some graceful, we have a certain theme and styles that we've employed. So they want me to use on hover and on select of different items, generally from portals, in a way that looks graceful, but also doesn't stick, doesn't stay highlighted. It's only highlighted as needed. So that's enough of the PowerPoint demonstration. I'm going to show you this, and I need a little feedback. This window's rather small for the demo because I want to be able to show multiple windows all on one screen. So the screen is small. Is this readable to you all? No feedback?
I can't see it.
Can't see it, John.
You can't see it.
No, it's just a black screen.
Black screen.
Black
yes.
screen.
Good one. Not readable at all.
Okay, hold on.
It must be
You did see the-
really, really tiny.
Black screen.
I can see a pointer, but that's it.
Hold on. You did see the PowerPoint. Tell me you saw the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yes,
the
yes.
PowerPoint.
There we go.
Okay, so it must have been,
It's up now. Okay.
you're
Pretty
seeing it
small.
now. Okay, perhaps I selected the PowerPoint instead of the screen. So you see this window on this blue background, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If I spawn another window, do you see this other window as well?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So this window here, I'm putting into the upper left corner. If your screens are wide enough to see the whole thing. This represents the main system, which again is much larger than this, but this is the starting point from which we're going to spawn other windows. Now, when someone logs in, they create a session, and that session is represented by a UUID. If I were to say new session, you'll see that this number here, this 8-digit number right of the word win, is going to change because there's actually a UUID associated with this session. What I've chosen to do for the window names is to say, give me some English name, and it's being shown here in the portal as well as in the top of the window title. Show me something English. Okay, it's a verification of benefits session, VOB session. And then I show in brackets just the word win for window and the left 8 digits of the UUID. So this is almost guaranteed to be unique. When I start a new session, you simply get a new UUID assigned. That's easy enough, right? Now I'm going to open up one of the many customers. These are made up customer names, right? Patient number 100,001 Alpha Mega. Now I've opened up a separate window, but you'll see over here, I'm logging this window name that I've made for the patient into the session specific to the user. I'm showing the window name at the bottom, I'm showing it in the portal here, and I'm showing it at the top of the window. So this is patient or PT 100,001. Alpha Mega is their name, first and last name. And again, that word win with an 8-digit left of the UUID contained here. It is holding the entire UUID, but I'm grabbing the left 8, right? So just a little about the patient. This is an overly simplified demo. This is a list of the different policies they might have. This is a list of the different verification of benefits records related to the customer that they might have. And this is, of course, scalable. Typically, there'll be 1 to 10 or so VOB records. So this is a fairly realistic presentation of what's there. Later on, I'll take this apart and show you some of the stuff that I did to try to make the selection and the scrolling kind of cool along with the selections. I'm not using a traditional approach to this, and I'll show you that at the end. So I've now selected one patient, and I'm going to select one of the verification of benefits records. When I do it, it will highlight in yellow. When I roll over it, it's blue. When I highlight it with yellow, you'll also see for just a moment the particular policy it's associated with, which happens to be number 14 here, 100,014. They'll both turn yellow just for a flash, right? Flash and then off. Showing that again, select it, flash, and then off. Then the window is created over here for this particular verification of benefits. And the window name is shown up here. Is the patient, again with the name, so you can see it gets appended to the right as you drill down further through the tables. PPID is a way of abbreviating the policy number. The type of verification is for eligibility, and again, the 8 digits of the left of the UUID. So that's great. I have one particular verification of records screen open. Now, mind you, this itself might take almost the entire monitor. Let me go back to the downside of Windows is when you jiggle, you get things moving around with animation. I'm going to select another VOB record and another and another and another. John and I had talked a little about this. Is one thing that I have not done is made a validation so it indicates which ones have been opened so you don't get duplicates. I don't have the duplicate constraint in. But now I have a situation where I've got 5 VOB records open, and I've forgotten which one I'm dealing with. I've created 2 different methods of selecting which ones they are, besides just going down and selecting the window. I can come down here and look at window 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I pick number 3, it's going to pop number 3 to the front. You hit number 5, it'll pop 5 to the front. And as you can imagine, with a little bit of a complicated relational structure, ultimately I'm just grabbing the window name and selecting it, bringing it to front. But this might even be too much for them to see, because all you're getting here is a nice little blue button bar, but it doesn't tell you much unless you hover to see exactly what it is. It's not entirely intuitive to say I want window 5, because I don't remember in what order I picked these. So if I bring up a card window, that's going to show the entire list of windows. Now, what it's replicating, actually, if I close this window and move this down, here we see there's 7 windows open, but there's a hierarchy. The first one in yellow is the main session or the parent system that's always going to be open. So I make that yellow so that you know that's not one of the spawned windows. The first one spawned from there would be the patient record. But when I'm in the patient, I don't want to show itself. So the card window here is only going to show windows 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, the 5 VOB records. But here I label them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These numbers don't match these because relative to this patient, these are windows 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I put a number 3. Jonathan contributed this idea. So there's an indicator. That's window 5. That's 2. This is 1, and so on. But if I pick it here, it's going to pop it open and release the card window. So it's quick. I've got on the card window a rolling hover of blue. What I've not added is the yellow when you grab it just yet. But it's very quick, very easy way to select which windows you're on. After a while of working with one of these, it's obviously going to get a little confusing about how to close all the windows. So I can close each individual window, or I can come up to the patient and just say, close the open windows, and it's going to close all the windows except the patient itself. And then if I'm done with the patient, I can close them here. And I'm just going to recreate that again. Opening multiples. Now, I've got them all offset at a fixed distance from the parent window, just for consistency in presentation. They may tell me eventually they want each window to be open with a little stagger, kind of like this, but we haven't gotten that far. This is at the company. It's still at demonstration level. It's only been seen by 3 engineers. And these guys really are engineers. It's like everybody there except me has a computer science degree or master's degree. I also can additionally open the policy level. So I'm opening this window at another level, and you'll see the name at the bottom is a little distinct from the rest of them. But I believe when I do the card window, it's not going to include the policies, because I've designed this to only show windows specific to the verification of benefits, because that is probably all we're really going to open. I gave the ability to open up other dimensions, other windows with tables at a different level of the hierarchy. I gave that available for presentation, although I think what's going to happen is we're just going to say all we're ever really going to open are these verification of benefits, and everything else will still be in the single window format. So questions or comments on this? And I first of all, since this is a demo, not only for you, but at the company level, and I'm still refining it, I am welcome and open to hearing criticism, feedback, other ideas that might come up. I'd like to hear that. Then I will show you a little bit of the structure and a little bit of the layout design that I used some specific coding for. So any comments? And really, if you got them, bring them.
I'm kind of curious why this request came about. It seems like a lot to have open on your screen.
It would be, it's a good question. Why did the request come about? And that's because when they're looking at one patient and they're looking at they're trying to see if they're eligible for benefits, but they did a previous one where they looked at all the details of the benefits, and these all happen at different dates over the course of years. Someone may want to buy one of our products 2 years ago, and maybe they got declined from Medicare or United Healthcare or somebody, and they're coming back, or they want to upgrade. And we need to compare the history, but the users have determined it's too cumbersome to look at stuff and then go to another window and try to remember it. They want to see the history and the evolution of our relationship with the patient and our endeavors to try to qualify them for the equipment. We want to look at their history all at once, but in great detail, not just like, okay, he was approved or unapproved then, and it was here, and this is the policy number. That's proven to be inadequate. There's literally thousands of objects on the VOB screen. I'm not showing any of that, but we're at what's your deductible, and where do you live, and is your insurance covering you where you live, or is it in a different state, and have you moved, and who are you related to, or
Yeah.
insurance is complicated. Sorry?
John, this is the complaint everyone has when they're forced to go to a web app, right?
Right.
It's one page. Well, I can't do separate windows and do side by side comparison.
Right.
That's the biggest advantage of being able to do multiple windows versus web-based apps, which don't even have that possibility.
Right. Good comment. Let me point this out, because they have, in this case, he's got two different policies. And if you've got insurance, especially if you're over 65, you know that it's not uncommon for somebody to have Medicare and Medicaid and a Medicare supplement, and you might have 3 or 4 different insurance policies. And the insurance companies there's a hierarchy, but there's also a debate about who's going to pay for what. There is a routine we have to follow that's different for everybody about who's going to pay for what. So if I were when I open one of these screens and you saw the policy flash, this might be related to policy number 14, this one's 13. But if I were to use it the way we have it now, when I'm looking at one VOB, that particular policy is glowing in yellow because that's the related policy for this VOB. But when I'm on the patient record and I'm looking across policies at different verification records, I can't highlight one. I have to bring it down to another window so they can see compared which ones with which policy. That's why I can't use global fields, and part of the reason I can't use global variables is I can't let any selection here be affected by which windows open down here. I have to look at it independently, and I have to not reset anything. So one thing I didn't mention, the entire process of showing this data in different windows and grabbing the window's name and declaring it, I am not editing any of these data records. I've not edited my patient. I've not edited his VOBs. I've not edited his policy. Everything's held in yet another table that is called a window instance table. And these are all referencing by window name and session ID and user ID referentially. So I'm minimizing any data changes. I'm just looking at stuff and making no modifications, which required a little trickery. Does that make sense?
John, I have a couple of, first of all, I think this is a very, very impressive. Window management is hard, and I think you've done a great job with it.
Who is this?
This is Daniel Shanahan.
Great.
A couple of thoughts I have is I wonder on the layouts, and I know this is a demo, but I wonder if color could be employed to help differentiate the session window from the patient window from the VOB window.
I would
That's
love
my-
to say yes, and the answer is no.
Yeah, okay.
The guy who's the interface designer, which is not me, I have to follow the established themes and standards, and this is actually taken from their theme. It's actually taken from FileMaker's original cool gray theme and then modified. But I'm not allowed to add much color. We have a little bit of light blue, a medium blue, 2 shades of dark gray, white and yellow, and that's it.
Yep, I can appreciate that. Then the other thought I have is if you show your VOB screens, so without that table, when you're looking at the VOB screens and they are staggered as they were,
Sure.
again, you might have this constraint, or you might just not like the idea, and I'm not offended by that at all. But one thing I notice is that when they're staggered, the only thing that I could see is VOB4. And I wonder if there would be a way of changing the font so that you could stack and get the name of the person to the left, so that if they are staggered, the user could see that they are both VOB and could see which user.
And where in the window are you looking at that? If you look at a particular screen, you're talking.
Yeah, so if you're looking at that so when you,
Right.
so now we can see it. Now it's not a problem. But when
Right.
you had originally opened those,
Mhm.
would they stack? And you said they might need to be staggered.
Sure.
When you did stagger those, the only thing that I could see was VOB4. And I think, oh, I wonder if that could be a smaller font and stacked so that I could both see that it was a VOB and I could also see the name of the user. So the end user would have two pieces of information readily available from a slightly stacked group of windows.
No, that's an excellent point. The label at the upper left
That's it. Yeah.
should not be what it is. It should be something easier to catch. If just like, for instance, over here, if just the corners were available, you could get enough of it to see it. Yeah, I get
That's,
that.
yep, yep.
And that is something I definitely want to take into account. Now, mind you, I've only got 2 days into this demo and I'm working like 60-hour weeks. And I'm actually not even working on this right now. I'm working on the original version of the BOB structure. There's so much change in the medical industry that we're moving fast. So 2 days into it, I put this together as a starting place and hoping for feedback like that. Because as you all know, when you're working on something and your head's down into multiple things, you can't really consider all the different aspects of it that you need to. Like, so Jonathan and I spent about an hour on the phone the other day, at least, Jonathan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he gave me some feedback of different ideas, and he came up with the idea of the button bar and how it would be, and then the number on the left and things, how that might work. So feedback from colleagues, that's why we're in these meetings, right? It's so essential, right? As one person. I've been working alone in FileMaker for 20 plus years in isolation, working from home. And now I'm on a team of 7 developers and all super smart people and all talented in different ways. Some people are good at interface, some are good with servers, some are good with JSON, some are good, with the JavaScript apps, and we teach each other, and it's kind of fun. So when I tell my manager, look, I'm taking a couple hours a day to be part of this group, and I conduct other meetup groups, and I'm a member of like 9 meetup groups, she's like, yeah, go for it. That education is very important. You're bringing fresh eyes to the team that I couldn't do alone, right? You got 18 people, 17 other people here can give me feedback from which I'm going to learn.
Okay, I got one for you.
Yeah.
Daniel stimulated a thought when he was talking about when your windows are offset to have some way to see more about the window. What about putting the name and maybe the and one other data point rotated up the left side of the window, so that when they're offset, you see a name. Of course, they're all going to be the same name, but I mean,
Vertical font, right?
Or just rotated. It doesn't have to be vertical. It just could be rotated on the left-hand side so that it reads up the left, so that you can see either a name or the thing that's specific to that window.
It's a good idea. Now I have to run it by the interface expert there, and I'll give you a 90% chance he's going to say no.
Yeah, but if you've got the windows offset because the windows are horizontal,
oh, I get it.
Most of the time they're going to be offset horizontally, and so
so I could gather them a little more like this, and just leave a half an inch and be able to tell which is which, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. That's a great idea. I'll run it by him.
Well, tell your interface guy I said that, and he'll then have to agree with you. Yeah.
As long as it's not me, maybe he'll say yes.
Hey, John, this is Martin. I wanted to just say this is brilliant because I'm of the opinion that you never know where a user is going to need to go. I mean, you can kind of, grab them by the nose and drag them around, but sometimes it's really hard. And I've never done this kind of work with medical insurance stuff, but I have this feeling that it's sort of like my desk looks, with books here and pages there and all this, because I got to look. And then at some point I'm like, okay, I found the answer I need, click a button and it all puts it away. And I'm ready to move on to the next research I have to do. I mean, good job, sir. I think it's brilliant.
Well, thank you, Martin. I'm listening for feedback, and then I want to show you a couple other things. How much time do I have, Jonathan? He stepped out. I'm going to assume an hour.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, as much as you want. You know, if you want to take an hour, it's another 20 minutes, but you could take longer if you know everybody wants to see the
Yeah.
content.
There's not a lot more, but I want to hear some more feedback and just thoughts, advice, criticism, feedback. Because partly I do this is to learn, right?
Yeah, I'm offended by your background picture, John, because you're bragging, and
Am I bragging?
yeah, and we don't get to have views like that in our backyard. So
We just have lots of snow.
I'm trying to find a way to turn it off while I'm sharing my screen. It makes it a lot more difficult.
we didn't have near as much snow as Mike Ross did. So yeah.
Well, at least I'm not in Texas. I've got friends in Texas who are not doing so well.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier about my sister. Oh, we have our 22nd person joining us. Bill C. Wow, 22 people. I think that's a record. Hey,
Are you
Bill,
still-
how
Hi,
you doing?
good. How are you?
Ah, there you are. Yeah, I recognize you. Have you been to one of these meetings before, or have I seen you at one of John's meetings?
I think it was the meeting last week with, I think they
Right.
said it was the Sacramento group or the
Oh, okay, yeah.
California
That's
group.
us.
That
Yeah.
had people from all over.
Well,
Right.
thanks for joining us. We
Sorry,
have
let me-
we have people
missed the
from all
beginning.
over the country. We had somebody register. I don't think he's here, but we had somebody register from Belgium, I think, and he might be joining us a little later.
Cool.
Yeah, I
That-
told them about it.
oh, okay, yeah.
because you're-
We had one meeting a few months back that had somebody from Austria, somebody from Greece, and somebody from Japan in the same meeting. So anyway, hey, John, you looks like you're about ready to show us your underlying data structure.
Yeah.
So I want to hear more about that.
Okay. So here's what I call the window instances table, the window instance table, where it grabs the name of the window and it'll tell you that the table that you've selected it from. This one should have said patient, but I haven't gotten that far. So I'll type that in. There's some flaws in the structure. So this just lets you know from what data table it's grabbing the window is representing. And then you've got a window number, but then I've got another calculation that determines if it's VOB, which is the target of the windows that we're mostly going to display, then start a numbering sequence from scratch starting there. And this again is user specific and session specific. So every user will have a different set of basically session records, I'm calling them, although they're all sharing one. Here's the UUID for the session. You can see they're all rooted in the same basic session, and every window has its own UUID, again, from which the left 8 digits of this is parsed into the actual display name of the window name. So what we call a window name. So this is you could call this the window names table, right? Where it's monitoring all of these. Now I have 7 records, and if I've done this right, when I go to close one of these windows, it should delete that window from the list. So therefore, when I show this card window, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now I only have 2, 3, 4, 5 because I delimited 1. So one thing Jonathan and I talked about on Saturday and haven't had time to fix is if I close window 3, then I even messed it up. When I close window 3, my card window's gone now. So I'm going to close all these windows and start from scratch. I've got some bugs. When I close things in the wrong order, things go bad. So I'm going to start a new session record. I'm going to open this back up again. There's a lot to consider with this. So I'm opening up again, just with they're all superimposed on each other, 5 VOB records and moving them over. And the idea of going up the left side is really a sharp idea. I like that. I like the idea of also renaming things in the upper left to make it normal. I have to consult the engineers on that. So when I bring it over here, it lets me, I got those 5 records and they're 5 being displayed. But depending on which one I delete, if I do this right, let's say I take out number 2, I need to renumber these 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 1 and then nothing missed, number 2 missing. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 1, 3, 4, 5.
If you mark the window as closed,
Could mark it as closed and remove it from the list. Yeah, it's still like an active value could be toggled as well. Instead of a resequencing, that'd be faster, it'd be lighter weight, wouldn't it?
Do we have to have numbering?
Well, I want to show them in order of creation, but now I've closed window 2 and now I have a gap in the sequence and that just looks terrible. So how I manage that, we were thinking of just going in the background, calling up a card window with this and go into the user specific records that are VB only and just sort them and resequence them. Yeah, that's pretty fast in a little subscript, but I haven't gotten that.
What's your definition of session? I'm sorry, is that a patient record?
When you log into the system at first, the parent window, the main system, is going to assign you a UUID as a session until you log out. That session ID is carried through these. I'm terming session to each one of the spawned windows off of the main system because it was traditionally a single window paradigm and now it's a multiple window paradigm. We're talking about each window being a separate session because the actions I do on each record are going to be independent and not reflect on the parent through a hierarchy and neither affect each other. Whereas right now, the way they are, every time you change something, you're affecting the hierarchy. So we want to work independently as if this was a session. It's kind of a quasi session record, if that makes sense. So I can work independently in separate windows. Or you could call it a multiple window system, but the way I'm handling it is we're calling it multi-session. Does that make sense?
How does this affect record locking?
For the most part, it's going to eliminate it because you're working independent on these. Once in a while, you're going to push data back to the patient, of course, or you're going to extract data from the patient. But the record locking will be no worse than it is now. We have basically a rule in place that only one person works on a patient at a given time or works on a related verification record, a VOB record per patient at a time. So it's really only going to be one person. But thank you for bringing that up, because if I come and edit the VOB type here, and let's say I just start to edit it, and we know because I employed field level validation on this field that you can't put that value in there. I'll revert it. You have to use something from the list, right? But if I go in there and I begin to edit it, I'm showing this because I want to be a mid-edit thing, and I come back to this window and I say close the related windows, it's going to close everything except if my bug tracking is working. It may not be working, but I had it working so that it would come to this window. When it came to this one, error capture is on it, would give a dialogue and say, I can't close this window. You have to address the data. I won't know exactly what I'm addressing, but I'm going to address the fact that there's data incomplete. And then I should be able to come back and close this window as part of the loop. We have a little bug there. So I may have record locking within one of my windows, within one of my sessions, but it won't be locked from other users for the most part. The idea is when I'm all done and I close the whole system, I've got cascading delete going on just for this one table, so that all these instances will be gone when I end my session. But record locking is always an issue. I'm more concerned about record locking between windows for a user. That's the biggest problem. And so we built a little bit of error trapping in for that. It just didn't work properly when I tried. I'll try it again. If I can. Yeah, okay. That is not working, so they've got a little bug in the system. but I have a subscript that will look for any records that are locked in any of the child windows and freeze you on that child window and force you to adjust it. Oh, so structure. We have a bunch of data tables, 4 of them, one of them being the session record, and then the window instances record, which just has a few fields. The patient and the session ID, its own ID, a constant, and then a few window specific values. The number, the name, whether or not it's a VOB, it gets a different number, the actual table it's tied to versus the window name. And then if it's a VOB, a particular window name there. The relationship structure is interesting. I use a thing I learned from Soliant many years ago with a coloring convention so that every instance of a given base table in the schema will share the same color. So in this case, we're using the pink for instances. If I looked at everywhere where there was patient, that would be that shade of blue. It's much easier to identify what you're doing. So there's a number of these window instance tables, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 instances of this table in the structure with fairly simple relationships. And you see, for the most part, they're based on tying the session ID, the patient ID, and the name of the window. That calculation field simply determines the name of the window based on the relationship. I could tear into each relationship, but you can see it's simple. They're all based on patient, session name, and window ID, tying the data records to the session table with unstored calculations. So I'm not actually changing the data in the record. So when I change the values in the instances, it reflects in the tables. That makes sense? Using anchor buoy, if those of you aren't familiar, anchor buoy, where you have each table has an anchor or a base table on the left, and anything that you're talking to is linear, unidirectional from left to right. So if I'm on a policies table, everything I'm looking at has an instance of any related table to the right of it. If I was from patient looking at policies, I would go from the left to the right to the policies.
And the base table is what the layout is based on.
Yes, the base table is the same as the first table occurrence that you build for each table when you build it. And that is the one that each layout is based on. It's only going to be based on the tables on the far left. And any portals or related information or related calculations will go left or right through the different tables. Mostly it's only one. In Anchor Buoy, mostly you only have 1 level deep, but there's times when you get 2, 3, or 4 togs to the right. The thing is, here is you see a lot of multi-predicate joins. Here I'm looking at make sure that from the patient to the instances table that you're using the session ID, the patient ID, and I'm looking at other windows that are not mine, so that's a not equal. I'm looking at window names that are not mine so I can see what my relationships are. So you have multi-predicate joins, meaning multiple match keys, but pretty simple, and try to organize it clean. There's one other idea I want to share with you that I think is interesting. I learned from a colleague of ours by the name of Brad Stanford, who goes to Mike's group now, right, Mike?
I don't think I've seen Brad. I don't think I've seen him in our group.
He went to work for John, what's his name up there? John
Sindor?
No.
John Newhoff?
John Newhoff. Yeah, he was in your group recently. He gave a little presentation.
Okay. I don't remember, but that's all right.
Yeah, he went to work for John Newhoff. He lives in Texas. He lives in a little town, Dublin, Texas, west of Dallas, out in the country. Was living on an airport, or his office was on an airport runway, a little town. So what he taught me was this cool thing where when you want to select a row in a portal, now typically we'd either make the fields a button, or we'd go beneath it and we would make a button that had maybe some conditional formatting, a row button that you would select it. I have yet another one here that's invisible. These are all rectangles. These are not buttons. If I double click it, there's nothing going to happen. And the fields are not buttons either, just fields. So what that allows me to do is to make a script trigger on the portal that is an on-object enter script trigger. That is a selection row that will grab the ID and do whatever you want to do, maybe pop open another window. That makes everything in the portal itself easily modifiable, and you don't have to do anything. I've done it here with the policies and the VOBs. And then what I did was I put, instead of conditional formatting, on this field here, I have a hide object when applied, so that when the ID of that parent table doesn't match the variable you selected, that's just a local variable, then hide it. So what happens here is I have one object in the background with on hover. This is not the native portal hover. This is an object that on hover turns blue. And I have another object in front of it that turns yellow when I select it, and then it goes away. You notice that the yellow is only there when the script is running, and I use a half a second delay on the selection script. So click, half a second, gloss, boom, gone. That way I can see real quickly an indicator. Did you select row 4? Visual indicator I selected row 4, and it goes away. Therefore, I'm not changing any data in that record. I'm not setting any global fields. I'm not setting any global variables. I'm setting a local variable to the duration of the script tied to objects, and none of the objects in the portal have any buttons associated with them. It's super lightweight and super portable. It allows you to not have to take things apart. If you were to add or resize fields within that portal, you don't have to worry about them being grouped and having to ungroup it if they change size or if you inserted one. You don't have to deal with any of that. That's a cool little trick I learned from Brad Stanford that I try to employ everywhere. Does it make sense? On object script trigger on the portal with objects that are hidden as opposed to conditional formatting and no global fields.
So the object you're entering is that rectangle.
No, well, I'm actually entering the portal at I'm clicking and holding it down. I'm entering the portal at a given row. But I'm not actually entering anything except the portal.
You're entering the portal row.
Yeah, the fields themselves are set to not be enterable in browse mode. So I'm just entering the portal row. And
right, so your on object trigger is on which object? It's on the
portal itself.
The portal itself.
Isn't that tricky? So the portal knows which row you're grabbing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you don't have to say get portal row number. You don't have to do any of that. You just say on object trigger, get the ID from that relationship. And because your cursor is selecting that row, FileMaker automatically knows that the ID you want is that particular row. Super lightweight.
I've always used a blank field for.
Sorry, can't hear you. Microphone.
So sorry, I've always used just a blank field and then made that a button. But you're saying you don't need one at all. It's just the on object.
Yeah.
Nice.
So none of the objects have any buttons assigned, and they're not enterable, and there's no conditional formatting, which is slow because hiding the object is faster than conditional formatting.
See, I was using I always use the conditional option.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of that too, right? We used to have like a button that was transparent that did nothing maybe, and that would just do conditional formatting because you can't take a rectangle that you draw and assign conditional formatting. You can do that,
which is why I always did a blank field, right? Yeah.
What? Sorry?
That's why we always had a field called blank in every table, right?
Right. So this is lighter weight than all of that, and more
Very
transportable.
nice.
So I could grab the whole thing, throw it on the screen, just assign the portal to a different script or a different variable. You could use the same script, different script parameter, and then just change the definition of the portal, and it's reusable and fast.
Oh, that's totally worth the price of admission for today, John. Thank you.
Yes, agreed.
And give that all to Brad Stanford. He taught me that at the iSolutions conference in 2017, 5 years ago, 4 years ago.
I have a question. Along those same lines, one of the things that I do is I use a blank button bar, and I use a calculation to say the selected row shows the button bar active, so that I can, in the theme, if I wanted to change that selection color throughout the whole system, whereas, going back to the conditional formatting, you'd have to go to every portal that has that and change the conditional formatting manually. But when I use a button bar in that way, I can change that particular button bar object in the theme and change that color all the way across the system, the
Nice.
highlight color. But the other question I had is, how does that compare as far as you're saying that conditional formatting is a little slower than hide object? Do you know where calculating the active button bar falls into that? Is that a slower method? And I'm sure it's negligible because it's such a tiny little thing, but
Sure,
just
probably lighter weight than conditional formatting. The two things that I know of that are the slowest in FileMaker are conditional formatting and the get value list items function, which is legacy, but I still use that once in a while. I don't know, I haven't tried a button bar in there. I just like Brad's approach of not having anything in the portal except the fields and maybe an object that gives it the color, because I had started with some other approach by giving the fields the on hover, right? But then you get just one field highlighting. I want the whole row to highlight. So I actually have two objects there, right? Two rectangles. One's transparent that just has an on hover of blue, and the other one that's transparent that has, when you select the local variable, to turn yellow. But they're both hidden most of the time, so they're super lightweight. I just like that, but the button bar idea is good too.
another thing that, we're using that on object enter. One of the things that I found when programming with WebDirect, for instance, if I want to have a button on a portal row, like the traditional method of having a button maybe behind the fields, and then you go to click on the button, in WebDirect, you can't click on that button because the fields are in front. So I'm wondering that on object enter might actually work well with that. So the result is I use the selected row color with an opacity so that it only shows, so I can put it above the fields so that in WebDirect I can click on the row. And when it highlights, it's showing the fields through, but giving a color basically with a reduced opacity so that you can still see what's behind. But then if I have to edit any of the fields in the portal, I have to put that button behind the field so I can get to the fields. And sometimes I forget to bring it back to the front and all that kind of stuff. So I'm interested. I'm going to play around with that on object enter technique.
Hey, Ron,
let me answer this. Sorry, let me answer this for you, Ron. The part I forgot to tell you was the reason I employed Brad and Stanford's idea is because I was doing a huge amount of WebDirect and I ran into that problem of inability to click through that's browser based. This solves all of that. So this will work just as elegantly with the rollover and everything here as it would in WebDirect, or as in WebDirect as it would here. And you don't have to worry about the click through because all you're clicking is the row, the button. You're clicking in the portal and everything's in the portal. So as long as you get in the portal in a row, this works perfectly in WebDirect. And that is really the reason that I started using it, and I forgot to tell you that. So this will solve it.
Nice.
The stacking, object stacking issue. Who was going to comment next? Is it Mike?
No, not me.
Oh, no, well, because Ron said he had to move the object back. Well, when did they add the object list on the left side, right? Version 18, 17 or 18. So I'll click on the object on top and just hide it, do my work, and then unhide it again.
Okay.
I honestly, I find the object tool, the object list on the left, kind of unwieldy, especially when you have a very complicated layout with a lot of objects on it. I haven't really just gotten used to being able to use that as much as just, moving things backward and forward as I need to, but it probably just is, I need more practice with it and need to.
I'm going to share my ignorance. I did not know after almost 30 years until last week that these little icons hide and show both the object palette, what do you call this? The inspector palette and the object palette, that you can do this in layout mode. In the structures I'm working with, unlike other people who love to have this open all the time, if I've got 2,000 objects on a layout, and I do, this will just make everything dog slow. So that is always closed, and this one's generally always open. Some people prefer to do the new inspector over here, and then you can close this one and move this separately, and that's fine too. But I've gotten used to that being on. But I will never have that object palette on unless I don't know where I'm looking for something. And that's a personal preference, but that personal preference is driven by the systems I work in that are so heavy on the screen. And that's because it's so heavy and performance is so important for us with a cloud server that every single object and every single script and every single field and relationship and execute SQL command and everything I do, I have to keep in mind, how is that going to impact performance? Because it really does. So like, I'm trying to eliminate everything I can. I like having this on every screen. I don't know anybody who else does this, but I'm always stretching screens around and I always have a little icon that just resizes the window, which I make invisible in WebDirect because that won't work, right? But hide it in WebDirect.
How do you get that to work in Windows? Does that work in Windows now?
What?
Are you using adjust window
size to fit?
Size to fit. So that works in Windows now.
Yeah. So I might do this manually, or I might have a script that does it like I'm toggling the status bar off and on, and then I just want to, well, let's clean it up. Yeah, it works in Windows.
Okay. Didn't used to. That's why I hadn't used it.
Well, we used to have an issue with all of this stuff would be inside of a giant gray frame as part of the application until 16 came out, and that was so ugly. Everybody's smiling. Yeah, what a pain in the ass. So as soon as 16 came out, that framework went away.
Yeah. Anyway, so I wanted to say I really like the object palette under certain circumstances. So I'll turn it off and turn it back on when I need it. The nice thing about it, Ron, is that is you can move stuff around by dragging them in that palette. You can also select items that you can't see on the screen. You can't find them on the screen. Right. You can select it in that palette and you can see it in its hierarchy, so what object is it in? So you're in the fields, you're not in the objects, John.
I'm sorry. Oh.
Okay. So you can see buttons have all their objects built, inside them. So you can open up a button and then look at the like if you got multiple fields that you've combined to form a button, you can select the individual field without selecting them all. I mean, it's a really nice way to really work with individual items. And the more stuff on a layout, I find that a lot handier.
It's especially useful, Jonathan, when you've got slide controls and tab panels and you don't know which tab panel or slide object is on, it'll take you right to it.
Yeah.
So it has incredible use for me. I just turn it off because I'm only using it a small part of the time.
Right, me too.
And if you have 1,000 objects here, it's really slow. You got to do that.
I agree. I have the same situation with, I have some layouts that just have, like you said, 1,000 objects, and you open up that object palette and suddenly, everything is dog slow. But I didn't know that you could toggle it on and off like you showed there, John. So that was, you said it was like,
I was doing
embarrassing that you didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I was doing the pain in the ass thing. View objects.
Yeah.
And then I was like, Fields tab, objects tab. Okay, go to that one. It was, and like I couldn't even deal with that. And one day, one of my colleagues, there's two things I'll be real honest, I'm ignorant about. So one of my colleagues said that, and then the other thing that I didn't know until like 2 days ago. No, it's not Script Dugger, the data viewer, right? I've got a value here and I want to change it. And I was showing him, well, I'd put it in the add to watch, then I'd go over here and then I'd write a let function and I'd rename the whole thing, right? And he's like, no, dude, you don't have to do that. You just come over here and double click it and change the value right there. And I was like, what? You could do what? So there's always things that I don't care how senior you are, there's something you don't know.
I do agree also, though, that the object palette definitely has a lot of great uses. So I'm not saying that it's something that I don't ever use. It's just as a general rule, when I'm, moving fields around and doing certain things, it just seems a little bit more cumbersome than it's worth. But I mean, yeah, it does have some great uses as well. So.
John, this is Chris Warner. I wanted to chime in on this. I've done some, not exactly like this, but similar work with having, I guess, variables specific to different windows. And I wasn't being real rigorous about it. If someone opened another window and it was a -2 window or a -3 window,
Right.
I would assign the variable set to that. And I was using the evaluate function, and come to find the evaluate function, if you throw a window name in there and that window name has a dash in it, it evaluates it as a minus and it just goes haywire. And so if
Wow.
you're grabbing a window name that is a -2 or -3, convert the dash to an underbar and you'll have much better luck monkeying with those window names.
Good
Well,
feedback.
because the
Well, Chris-
evaluate function tries to make it a calculation.
Yeah, it tries to evaluate. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
that looks like a minus. Let's subtract that.
Wow,
from that.
that's
Oh, what are we
interesting.
good at?
Chris, do you see the usefulness of this, trying to manage multiple windows from your point
Yeah,
of
I
view?
mean,
You've
I
got
have
more
a
experience.
similar thing. I'm big on dynamic navigation systems. So if I want to add a new module, I just go into a nav section, say, let's add another top nav segment, and it's going to be, XYZ or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And I hit refresh and the whole UI just jumps and I get a new segment in my nav bar.
Mhm.
And so a problem I was having is that if you made another window and I navigated to a different section in the other window, it would make the initial window jump. The nav
Right.
would evaluate, in synchronous. And so that was an undesirable behavior that I was trying to get out. And so I went down the road that you're going with here, where you're having isolated window sessions and they would all have independent nav variables. So that's why I got onto this.
We have a nav system in place, and role-based structure and all. It's all dynamic and it's great, but that's all in the main system. I don't want to have to recreate all that in this module that I'm building, where I'm separating part of the functionality because our main file is getting too big, right? Too
Yeah.
complex with 315 tables. So I'm pulling it out. But since all you're going to do is a certain amount of work with these VOBs, and then you're going to close the entire file, go back to the main system, I wanted to avoid a new navigation thing and just make it Windows specific. Any other feedback you got, Chris? I mean, you've done more of this than I have.
Well, something I ended up doing was having sort of on-demand created global variables. So I would manage my nav and subnav, labels in a global variable. But if you have a dynamic nav system, it's open-ended. You could have, a few or a lot. So rather than sort of pre-create, whatever variables I might need, I just come up with them on the fly, and I use a let, because the let function can create variables. It can also create global variables. So I was saying, hey, if I have a new window here and I don't have this in my list yet, then do a let function and append $$ with whatever my window name is, obviously with the hyphen substituted out of it. And then I would get a new global variable just on the fly anytime I spawned a window. Or I could spawn a window and rename it in a script and then say, now go generate your variables. And that would work too. So sort of dynamically creating global variables was a good skill to have when dealing with stuff like this.
So you might do that instead of my window instances table.
Yeah, I would manage it in globals.
I
Just
thought about that.
created on the fly.
But doesn't that make it a little, and I'm just asking, right? Because if I open a window here, now I've got a card window that will tell me exactly what's open, and I can give somebody the opportunity to select one. How would I do that if I used variables instead of a table?
Yeah, your use case is different. Mine was purely for driving UI elements and stuff like that. They didn't need to interact with them. And, it's hackable too. So that's kind of a shortcoming of it. But, your average bear is not going to be sitting there trying to hack their own UI to, what benefit. So the sort of downsides of that approach didn't really come into play.
Okay.
But
I had thought of,
you need your list. So
I had not done your method, and I thought about it and I didn't master it. And I went down this road when I talked with Jonathan, because this made it easier for me to have a selection palette later on. That was the
John, what about the thought of doing something like a virtual list table and tracking and being able to display the open tables that way? One of the questions that I had from earlier was, you were talking about in your session table, that gets cleared out at the end of the session when you close out FileMaker, correct? So it's deleting those session records. Well, what if FileMaker crashes on the user and it doesn't get to run the closing script, for instance?
Then the next time they log in, you would wipe out any sessions assigned to that account name.
Gotcha. Okay, well, one of my thoughts was if you did do everything as global variables and use like a virtual list table in order to display those open windows virtually, then, you know, whenever the session is ended, it just automatically clears everything out. So.
There's no records to get rid of. And that's a smart idea.
John?
Yeah.
Nick Ross here. You've got this button bar that's kind of dynamic, or it hides, you know, goes 1 through 5.
Yeah.
What if you used a value list with like a pop-up or a drop-down that would actually then display the actual window names?
A value list as opposed to me using a card window?
No, down there at the bottom where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
This is a presentation that's an alternative to this presentation.
Right.
Right. So here, this is obviously a button bar of a fixed size, and you're making the segments disappear if the window.
Yeah, I understand that, but rather than use the button bar, why not just use a drop down?
Yeah, I'm just kind of stepping it through. So a drop down, but then you've got a drop down in basically the footer, right?
Yeah, but you could also get a more coherent list of window names. I mean, you could get yours by tabbing over, you know, the tooltip, but you know, you could actually see the window names that way, and it could be dynamic.
Here's a question for you, Mike. Here, I've got a preview mode. Do you notice that it looks okay? So I got maybe the wrong layout for preview mode, but do you see that for whatever reason, our themes have been set up so that the header is a top navigation and the footer is bottom navigation? So trying to comply with the company's theme of there's really no header and footer, it's top and bottom navigation, so that they don't print, right? They're not there. There's nothing there to see, right? If I put a drop down in a bottom navigation, would it work? I don't know.
I rarely use those.
Yeah, me too, but I'm under a new paradigm. I'd have to test it out.
You could use a popover.
Huh?
You'd use a popover with a picker portal.
Yeah. I think that's why that the other guy who designed the interface asked me to go this routine with just a card window.
Yeah, that works.
I think we'll stick with that. I showed this so that they have options to consider, but I think they may like, I don't know, he may want the card window and the footer thing. It's just that you have to hover to see what you're doing here. This is not very intuitive. And you certainly don't have room for words. I'm just looking at options. I could run that by him too as a drop down. The drop down would have the actual name of the windows then, right, Mike?
Pardon me?
The drop down would have the name of the windows from the instances table.
That's right. That was because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't have a lot of meaning.
Right. It was just, again, this is just a starting place. And I immediately went from here to here. It was an interesting learning curve to make the relationships work to the instance table in such a way that I'm not altering the data anywhere. All based on related unstored calculations. Unless there's more questions, I'm done. Comments, feedback.
How much time have you spent on this, John?
Less than 20 hours. From scratch, from absolute zero. Yeah. Just importing the themes and starting from there.
One other UI possibility is to build that button bar at the bottom, but instead of it bringing up a window, it just tells you how many windows you have. So rather than going to window 1 or 2 or 3, if you click on any one of those buttons, it brings up that card window.
That's a smart idea. This would just let you just be an indicator, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Clicking that would bring this up anywhere. Yeah, that's a good idea. It is imperative. He wanted the reason and this normally is where our logo would go. So I had to get special permission to overlay in front of the logo. You don't see that here. but he wanted this to kind of give an indicator that's there because this is not the card window list. This is the actual related records, right?
Yeah.
So this was an indicator. That's a good idea. Just this using as an indicator. It could really just be one thing with a number of how many windows there are. Right?
Well, and also if you're not going to be using them as individual buttons, you can make it a lot narrower because you're only ever going to have single digits in there.
Or it could just say there's five VOB records, you know, boom, and then you click it and you see this thing that shows you what the 5 are.
Yeah.
It could be really small. Yeah, I like that. You get a lot of good, you learn a lot of good things when you put it in front of your colleagues. It's humbling. You know, I'm always like, you know, are they going to laugh? Is this going to be useful? I have no idea when I put this in front of you guys. You're like, oh yeah, moron, I learned that 10 years ago. I have no idea. So they're a little vulnerability, but you learn a lot.
Well, we had to stifle the guffaws, John, but you know,
What's that?
we had to stifle the guffaws, but you know, we like you, so we try to treat you nice.
So one thing I've kind of learned over the years, John, is that, you know, you've actually provided your users here 2 ways to navigate, with one with the card and one with the button bar. Been my experience that users don't like multiple ways. They want to know one way and get it done. They are a simple folk.
Oh, I've run into that in our system now. We have 2 ways to get back to the patient record everywhere. And everybody uses one way and I use the other. I'm like, why don't you use that one? And then they told me, well, because in some cases it does something else. So we have sometimes multiple ways to get somewhere, but they apply different conditions. And then that becomes a user training issue.
Yeah. It also becomes a maintenance issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have 2 ways to do something, the chances are really good that over time, one way is going to diverge from the other in what,
right,
what or how it does, how it works.
As the system evolves.
One will be the road less traveled.
This whole thing that I'm building is just a very tiny part of the rebuild of the module methodology that I'm doing. That's going to take thousands upon thousands of lines of script. That's a lot of JSON and API stuff that's going to be completely rebuilt and restructured. And it's many, many months worth of work. But I'm just starting with the foundation of what's it going to look like? Where are we going to go? I know what the tables are. The scripting I always can do. I always want to wrap my head on the scripting around my head on what the interface is like. And I think a lot of developers think the other way if they're more engineering minded. I want to know what's it going to be like for the user first, and I'm going to build my whole system around that UI. So when I did the presentation at DevCon on WebDirect, I said the very first thing I'm going to do, the very first thing is come up with a color scheme and a theme and styles and work all that out even before I figure out what my data tables are. Because someone's going to have to use this for me to get a sense of intuitively what they're comfortable with and what they want it to feel like will give me some indication about what my data structure should be. And then working with the APIs, I'll understand what the scripting needs to be in order to pull that off. So I kind of start at the very front end and work backwards, which is not what I hear often. But it makes me more comfortable because I know what the goal is when I know what the interface is going to be like. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just working on something that I was about that I might show you guys in a few minutes. That once I figured out what I've had a terrible mental block about how to get moving on it. And once I figured out what the UI was going to be, then I go, oh, okay, now I know what to do. Yeah, because if you got a picture in your mind, you can get there.
I went to mechanical engineering school, San Jose State, and I was lucky enough to have the dean of the department as my team coach. We all had teams, and he would call us in the office and give us terrible times when we were astray, straighten us out. He was very he's dead now. He was a wonderful man, Professor Myronic, like ironic, but Myronic. And he would say, you engineering students don't understand. You get a problem and you beat your head in the wall and you keep beating your head in the wall until you solve it. He goes, that's not how the human mind works. You come against a problem, you need to walk away, change gears, do something completely different and let it come to you. You cannot force yourself to resolve everything that there is. And I'm in my 20s kind of going, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because there's such a desire to just beat on one particular aspect, one dimension of our work, and forget that there's so many other dimensions. If you shut it off and go somewhere else, you'll get a sense of how it feels. It's like trusting your intuition, you know, cat and
It's
Kirk
called
approach.
incubation.
Yeah,
It's-
okay.
you let your mind work on it. Your
Right.
mind incubates on it. I've heard stories of several times of scientists who will leave a notebook next to their bed. Like they'll wake up in the middle of the night, something will come to them, and they write it down real quick and go back to sleep.
So
Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to go back to sleep.
Us old timers call that cogitation.
Agitation. How do I turn
I've
off?
absolutely dreamt the solution to a FileMaker problem that I've been slamming my head against a number of times, where I'd go to bed at night, not having the solution, and dream about it, and wake up in the morning with the solution.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't remember my dreams real well, but I've come up with a lot of stuff in the shower.
I was about to say shower.
Yeah.
Shower.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Nice bike ride.
during the middle of a day, just take 5 minutes and relax and go sit in the backyard or something.
Yeah.
Do it.
If I walk away from it, the chances of the solution coming to me increases exponentially.
Exactly. I'm going to change my virtual background more coherent with how I feel now. I am toast.
Good job, John.
Thanks for
Okay.
letting me give you guys that presentation. I'll shut up and listen a while, then I got
Well-
to go back to work.
Thanks
Well,
for
thank
letting
you.
us know which side your bread is buttered on.
No butter. Dry toast.
Well, that was great. Thank you.
Well, okay. Oops, sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Did you all hear that?
No,
No, I wasn't sharing my screen, so you, okay. John, can you turn off your screen, or let me just take
thought
it?
I did.
Oh,
I did.
oh, you turned off your screen. Oh, you're talking, so that's why you're, okay. Here's the way I feel a lot of times. Oh, no, what's the next one? Sorry. Sorry.
Did that for me.
No, I need to go back.
I didn't know you recorded your project meetings.
Sorry.
So good, Chris.
Yeah, that's a story of my life.
There you go.
Some days. Okay. I need to show you. I was going to show you something here, but before I show you this, does anybody have like something that they are struggling with, or something they need a? Oh, David Kidd is here. I'm sorry. Sorry, David, for leaving you out in the cold. We lost Martin Ramsey, had to leave, and I noticed on the list briefly, Jaron. I think that's how to pronounce his name. I wouldn't know. It's probably pronounced with a Belgian accent. Is actually from Antwerp, and he joined us for a few minutes and then went away. He had asked earlier. In the day, he had asked if we were going to record it, so evidently he wasn't able to come for the whole thing. And but we actually had there for a few minutes. We had a guy from Belgium who was joining us. Does anybody have anything that that they've bumped into recently that they would like to? Well, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my video. That they would like to ask or discuss or crowdsource anything?
Can I ask about a follow-up from last month? And John, I guess maybe you'd be the person. Did you ever come up with any information on that find in progress processing query discussion we had last month?
Which John are you asking?
Jonn Howell.
Yeah.
Was something that was brought up last month about the find in progress processing query.
Oh. Yeah, that was a strange nebulous bug where we moved to server 19.0.2, and we have one guy who just works with the servers, and he tweaked something and got it to stop happening. And I need to have a conversation with him because I'm not quite sure what they did.
I would like to know that too.
Oh, I think because everybody's on Citrix except for the developers who are working on terminal server, because Citrix is way too constraining for us to work. So 300 users in the system on Citrix. They split the Citrix up into more servers, and they applied more resources, specifically more RAM and maybe more, and effectively more processors by splitting them out into more servers. That alone may have been the result, because even though I got some argument, it seems evident to me that FileMaker Server 19, because there's more complexity than there was in 18, requires more resources to function properly. That and the fact that we're hiring people all the time, so our user count's going up. I think that was the simple result, putting more servers on it, more Citrix servers, and giving them more RAM. I'm pretty sure that was it.
Yeah, I first saw that bug with server 17.
Yeah, but it doesn't, I haven't seen it in a couple weeks now, or 3 weeks now. So I think it's a matter of resources. And my speculative view, because I haven't got a Claris engineer to confirm this, although Chris Moyer might speak in on this, is that 19 takes more resources to run, especially on Citrix.
I feel like I'm being baited.
You are. Do you have any idea?
So that's a hard one to answer because I've seen stuff all over the place. Did any of you guys see Nick Lightbody's Medium article about, and I'm specifically talking about server here, hosting FileMaker server on different configurations?
No.
Check it out. In fact, I think I can probably find it.
Link you want to put in the chat?
Yeah, let me grab it here.
Oh.
There it is. Copy and paste. Oops, there's the whole Google thing. Sorry. I give you a bunch of baggage. Let's try that.
I just looked at your browsing history.
There, that's better. So there's that. And then Fabrice of One More Thing, who does hosting out of the EU. They have US data centers, though. They've run into some stuff with Big Sur in 19.2. And so there are those issues going on. So I guess it's hard to kind of tease apart what's a performance issue versus what's a bug versus, what. So I guess it's a little early to, come out with any certainties.
There's no real comparisons about 18 versus 19 and what resource.
Hansa has done some stuff. Let me see if I can find Hansa's blog. Hansa of 2 4U fame, if you guys don't know him.
Right.
Yeah, he's had some good articles lately on comparing servers.
I saw some kind of bar chart he had, right?
Yeah, he tested the M series against other things.
Oh, I have a customer wanting to put FileMaker on the M series on any issues? FileMaker 19
works great. I got it running on an M1 Mac Mini, and it works, and it's noticeably snappier than the 6-core i5 I had it on before.
So if that was a MacBook Pro,
I'm sorry?
Are you on 19.1 or 19.2 on that server?
19.2.
And it's running?
It's running great.
Okay.
So if you're looking it up, I think it's probably a MacBook Pro or an iMac. No, it's a regular Mac. It should be fine. 19.2.
Well, that's the concern. Like,
Heidi.
yeah, I mean, people on the I don't know if everyone here is FBA and on the share voice, Fabrice has raised some concerns about Big Sur. I think the other concerns we've seen, Chris, have been client side. Because we have the same concern, John, of moving a client onto M1. And we've heard lots of individual, developers like us having gotten M1 Mac minis and it works great, it's snappy, etc. But then we hear these other things about, do you remember the specific issues, Chris, we've heard about on Big Sur?
What is it? Card windows with scroll bars. If you have a
Yeah.
multi-file solution and you're using the data API, it'll only talk to one file and treat the other files as foreign tables and not let you talk to them basically through the graph. Trying to remember.
And the word used was unprecedented issues. And so I don't even know if he mentioned all the issues. And so, unknown issues concerns us, right?
We're
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're talking about Big Sur.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the problem with M1 is it's Big Sur, and there's no
Yes.
non-Big Sur M1 issue.
Right. So if clients want to get a new server, they're getting an M1 Mac Mini. And so, maybe we really need to reach out to him and see, what all are you encountering? Does it affect us? Because like the data API issues don't affect our particular client, et cetera. So
Is it running native yet, or is it still going through Rosetta 2?
It's still Rosetta.
not native, yeah.
So stupid question. M1 is deployed on which devices?
There's just two right now. There's a 13-inch MacBook Pro
Yeah.
and a Mini.
Okay.
And a
And
Mac-
everything else?
yeah.
Everything else would still be sold
a
as
what?
Big Sur? But everything else,
Everything else is still on Intel.
but would
Oh,
it be
is
on
there
Big Sur?
You can run Big Sur on Intel boxes. The current lineup of iMacs is still Intel. They have not moved to the M1 chip.
But if you bought it, it would be on Big Sur OS?
Well,
Yes.
Big Sur is required to run an M1. So
But I'm asking if you buy a device that's not an M1, it'll still be deployed with Big Sur.
Yeah.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, if you get any new device now, you'll get Big Sur.
unless you go on the refurb list and buy a previous model.
So those issues you mentioned, Chris and Heidi, are those are on M1 or on Big Sur in general?
Those are on Big
They're
Sur, which
Big
you
Sur.
have no choice but to get with M1.
Yeah, and so I've been going out. I haven't done it in a week. Actually, gone out and just 19.2 server and Big Sur, looking on the community and looking on different. So I see one from February 4th. I see one from. Well, that was PHP, and we know about that. But I've been keeping an eye on it. Yeah, I didn't realize we were still recording, but.
Yeah, no profanity, people,
concern.
please.
Yeah. Card windows, scroll bars, HP, crashing FileMaker Pro. That's not a good one. Yeah. So.
Well, I have someone specifically saying they want to get assistance with getting FileMaker Pro installed on an M1 MacBook Pro on a very simple database. That's legacy stuff.
That probably wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think it would. Yeah.
It's
Something
specific things
Yeah.
that are edge cases. They're not edge cases, but they're out pretty far out on the bell curve as to whether you're going to run into them or not. Now, under certain circumstances, it's a deal breaker, but most of the time it's not. So I've got FileMaker Server 1902 running on an M1 with Big Sur, and it runs great. But I have a single file. I've only got a couple of users. It's so.
You
I mean,
said
you can take-
1902 or 1902?
I'm sorry?
1902 or 1902? You said 1902. Are you running 19?
It's all 19.2 at this point, right?
19.2, yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
And I just posted the search link for what that's worth, 19.2 server Big Sur, and you can kind of just browse that.
Thank you, Heidi.
But the guy who was, bringing this up is a hosting company, right? So these are, it affects them more and they see a lot more use cases.
I just stuck the hosting company URL in the thing.
FM Cloud, okay.
Yeah. They've got a nice setup. They've got it all the kinks worked out with deploying in Docker, and they can bring servers up very quickly. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, and our point in bringing this up is, yes, we've heard exactly what we heard, like we buy a M1 Mac Mini, it's going to be great, it's going to work great, et cetera. But then we hear these other things. And this isn't to be negative about Big Sur and 19.2, it's to apprise people so we don't have people, cause problems for their customers and thus cause problems for Claris, just to be aware of these issues.
Yeah.
People are bringing up.
Yeah, I always drag my feet on new versions for my customers. Yeah.
It's like the guy who doesn't bring home a child until he's 40. You call it a late adopter.
I had my first natural child at 48. So, yeah.
That sounds like a big baby.
Opposed to his unnatural child's.
Yeah. So I'm 66 and I have a 17-year-old. Yeah, it's the fun part of my life. Oh, I never said what my good thing that happened to me.
Go for it.
You just did.
You recovered from, you recovered.
I did recover.
Better
from
be your
COVID.
recover.
Yeah, yeah, I
My
did.
lovely child.
Yeah, no, my immune system was totally up to the task, and I really appreciate that. So, yeah, we won't go any more on that. So, does anybody else have any current news, favorite topic, anything they want to talk about? I want to show something off that I think is really cool. It's like old, but I saw a video the other day, or I started to watch a video, but I got so frustrated with it. The guy was doing a drag sort in a web viewer, and he said, "Well, there's no native FileMaker way to do this," and I'm going, well, yeah, there is an old way. And so we had to do one for one of our clients, and I put it together, and it's really kind of cool, and I like it, and I don't see it very often. So I thought I would show you this. So let me share my screen, and this one. Just going to share the window. Okay, so this is a solution for a school district, and they've got, this is for their HR department, and none of the data in here is valid. So, don't look at anything. It's all dummy stuff. But, well, I mean, this checklist item is all real, but personal data is all not real. So, so this actually feeds a grid. I think I showed this last month, and now we've got some other colors, and we've got some different categories. And so this is a list of items that they have to go through a checklist. They had a piece of paper that they would check off, when they received this form, or when they received that report, or whatever. In the process of getting a person hired, there's all these steps they have to go through. So they had this checklist. So we built this dynamic checklist with over here in preferences in the we created a value table here that's just checklist items, and some of them, there's 4 different categories: the regular checklist, which is kind of universal. There's which includes classified. They have classified and certified employees. Obviously a classified would be a bus driver or a coach or something, and certified requires a state certification that you're a teacher. So and then it's processing steps after they get all the pieces together, and then these are they send out forms and they get them back. So anyway, so these are all these different things, and there's like 50 of them here, and And so we wanted to allow them to be able to manage this list themselves. So say they needed to change a certified item to a regular checklist item, or if they needed to move these around. So say in the list, we want this one to come before this one. So we have this, you see the PDT was after photo before. Can everybody see this? Is this big enough on your screen, or do you need to enlarge it? Okay.
Great.
And so, so the thing about this is that you just drag the item to the different location, and I need to have it not reset so that you can see a little easier. Okay, so there's photo, there's PDT. So we're going to move this up here. And so now PDT is next to photo. So you can drag these around to resort them. Let's do it at the top so that we can, so this works, you can see it because it's going to be right there. Okay, so this works with triggers and a container field. This container field is a global, and it has a graphic in it. And then when you drag the item out, it has a script trigger, not a script trigger. I'm sorry. It has a. Can you see? I've got my. Oh, it's a different window. You're not able to see my.
Yeah, I can see it.
The I'm in the managed database. Can you see
Yes, we
that?
can see it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Nice full screen.
So I'm sorry, checklist. So this drag and drop, it's a container field. It's got an auto inner calc in here that does a nice job of it creates a variable. This is when you change the field. So like when you put something in there, it sets the ID, and this is the drop, and then the drag happens when you click on the field. So basically it says, okay, starting point, ending point, then the script goes through and reorders everything. And this checklist is based on, if you notice over here on the right, is I've just got this number, and the numbers, this number set will recalculate. Actually, it's a script that just loops through and sets the number based on the current order. And so if you watch this with the data viewer, what it'll make this like, if I put something here, it'll if I take 9 and move it up here to 6, say, it'll make the 6. It makes one of them like 6.1, so that it sorts them, and then goes through and renumbers them, so that you don't end up with a mishmash of weird numbers that you're eventually going to run out of. So I just thought this was really cool. It's a very simple way, totally native FileMaker way. The script actually looks kind of what? Oh. I think I got a problem with one of my scripts. I pasted some scripts in. Oh, this is actually running on. This is the one that's running on. Oh, you're not going to be able. Do you see my script window?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
No.
Let me reshare this. Just going to reshare the window. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't see the green line around it. Do you guys see the script?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this goes through and it does some looping to figure out where it is and where it needs to be, and then when it's all done, it goes through and redoes the numbers. But it's reasonably short script. I mean, if Jonn Howell wrote this, it would be 1,000 lines long. But I mean, for the most part,
Yeah, I recognize that script. I got the same exact script through Petrowski's website.
Yeah, yeah, I got this from Petrowski. Yeah,
yeah, it looks pretty darn good.
And his and I implemented it. It's taking it and copying it in. I had to change a few field names, but other than that, it was very simple to implement and everything. Fairly simple, and the thing about it is it's 100% FileMaker native. So I just thought that was cool, that you could reorder things just by dragging them around. Now, I think on his, what he did is he had this graphic spread across and in the front. I love being able to drag the layers on those. And then I need this to be on the left.
Is there really a need to loop through and renumber every single record, or just?
You only have to renumber the ones below where you're dragging.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, I think I've done something like that, not with the drag and drop, but with renumbering, where I just take the number, take whatever number I have, and then the one I want to move it next to, I like divide it in half or something. So just get increasingly smaller decimals. So I'm only renumbering the one record.
Right.
Decimal,
but
not a whole number.
that gets to be, you make it after a while a pretty long number, though. This way it's always only integers. And it doesn't appear to give it any serious performance hit.
No.
And there's only going to be 50 items in it approximately ever. So
Hey, John, to avoid the repositioning of those records, could you have it renumber on a portal off screen rather than on the portal that you're looking at, so it's not shuffling your rows around?
That's a great idea. Done. Going to do it. Thanks. Great idea.
It'll be a lot smoother.
Yeah. I just got this working yesterday, and I was thinking, wow, that really sucks. I'm gonna have to think of a way, but that's the value of crowdsourcing. I love it. Okay. So
you can also you could also capture the portal row number and then jump back to it when you're done, maybe.
Right, but then it would put it at the top, so it's still going to jump, unless you said, okay, how many rows down is it from what we see? And I've done that before, and it gets to be kind of complicated, so that
It's pretty much a nightmare.
jump it to the top and then go down 6 slots. So, but I think Ron's solution would be a lot better, because I do have a script. I've got a temporary window script that if the user uses it, it goes off the screen. But if I use it, because usually I'm debugging and stuff, it'll bring up a separate window on screen so I can see what it's doing. But it's totally, I've got several scripts that are utility scripts that just, you give it a few parameters and it takes care of things for you. So, so that wouldn't be too difficult. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I was going to see how this works. Yeah. See, this gives it a little better view because I made it now the full width or greater width. I can go even further. Don't want to cover up the trash can. That's not a good idea. But anyway, I think that looks a little better, so you can see a little more what you're doing. So anyway, I just thought that was cool. So does anybody else have anything they'd like to show off, their favorite thing, or ask a question? Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We had a nice crowd today. Thank you. And again, next month, I'm sorry I didn't inspiration as to what we're going to have this month until just a few days ago. So you got your notice, I think, over the weekend even. I try to get it out at least a week in advance, but sometimes I just don't have a good idea for what will work for a program. So John was showing me his thing. I said, hey, I think other people would like to see that too. So anyway, so thank you everybody for this month, and we'll see everybody. Invite your friends and see everybody. And remember, it's the 4th Tuesday of the month, 12:30 Eastern time, and we'll see each other again. Talk to you later.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, thanks, Jonathan.